You take about 22,000 breaths a day.
Which is a lot when you actually think about it.
Right. I mean, every single time your chest rises, you're pulling in oxygen,
Mm.
sure. But you are also inhaling this invisible soup of dust, exhaust, volatile organic compounds, and, microscopic bits of plastic.
Yeah, a lot of plastic these days.
Exactly.
Right.
And without even thinking about it, you're basically acting as your own personal human air purifier. I mean, your lungs are effectively a set of biological HEPA filters just working a grueling nonstop shift from the very moment you're born.
Oh, totally. And, our bodies expend a staggering amount of caloric and cellular energy just defending against that microscopic debris. Because every single particle that enters the respiratory tract triggers a biological response, right? Mucus production, macrophage activity, cellular repair. We just treat this as a given condition of being alive.
But what if you didn't have to? Like, what if the air you breathe could be engineered to a state of absolute mathematical perfection?
That's the dream.
It is. And today we are going on a deep dive into the absolute limits of air purification. And honestly, the limits of human longevity itself. We're looking at a super fascinating stack of technical specifications, engineering documents, and a 2025 U.S. patent specifically, U.S. patent number US 8268058B2 by Fuchiwu.
Right, and these documents, they're not just about building a better appliance. They describe a technology that's basically attempting to unlock the biological shackles of the human lifespan.
Wow.
Yeah, the underlying philosophy here treats baseline air quality not just as a matter of seasonal comfort, like getting rid of spring pollen. It sees it as the fundamental invisible barrier to extending human life.
Okay, let's unpack this because before we can even talk about the physical machinery, we need to understand the genuinely impossible standard this patent's trying to achieve. The documents refer to a concept called the 8-0 limit.
Yeah, the 8-0. So we are completely conditioned to accept air purifiers that promise like a 99% reduction in common allergens.
Sure, the standard stuff.
Right. But this patent just discards that completely. I mean, the engineering goal here is 100% total filtration efficiency in a single pass.
A single pass. That's wild.
It is. And the 8 zeros they are targeting, it refers to air, that is, dust-free, germ-free, toxin-free, smoke-free, odor-free.
I'll jump in for the rest.
Yeah.
Heavy metal-free, microplastic-free, and aerosol-free. I mean, it is just an incredibly aggressive list.
Very aggressive.
And the documentation specifically emphasizes the complete eradication of PM 0.1 and all ultrafine particles.
Yeah.
They aren't settling for trapping dog hair. They are targeting the absolute smallest fractions of airborne matter.
Exactly.
It's kind of like ordering a glass of water and receiving perfectly mathematically pure H2O without a single stray atom of anything else.
Okay.
It's almost an unnatural level of purity.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the source material frames this level of purity philosophically.
Right.
Because the inventor argues that even if a biological heaven existed, like a perfect, pristine, natural paradise, the air in that heaven would still contain naturally occurring bacteria, spores, and biological aerosols.
Because nature is messy.
Exactly. The mere presence of life generates microscopic debris. Therefore, the air produced by this machine, which they brand as Heaven Air Plus A, claims to be scientifically superior to the air in a hypothetical divine paradise.
Heaven Air Plus A. They're essentially engineering a void that nature cannot replicate.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, imagine the physical relief on your body if you spent, say, 8 hours a night sleeping in that environment.
Oh, it would be incredible.
Right. Think about your immune system never having to intercept a stray molecule of diesel exhaust or some piece of tire dust drifting through your bedroom window. The cellular energy your body would save over decades. It's difficult to even quantify.
Well, yeah, when you eliminate that constant microscopic assault, you're preserving the energy that your body normally diverts into constant tissue repair and inflammation management.
Yeah.
So the longevity aspect here, it relies on the premise that aging and cellular degradation are accelerated by the continuous low-level stress of simply breathing atmospheric air.
But I mean, a philosophical claim about outperforming heaven is one thing. Actually building a machine capable of outputting this Heaven Air Plus is entirely different.
Oh, definitely.
How do you physically force air to give up every single particle it carries in a single pass? If you just slap a hyper-dense filter in front of an intake fan, you choke the airflow completely. You end up with a wall, not a purifier.
Right, which is why you have to abandon the traditional filter concept entirely. Instead, the patent relies on what it calls a microscopic labyrinth.
The labyrinth.
Yeah. It is a five-stage architecture, officially the Air 80 maze purifier. It integrates ionization, electrostatic capture, labyrinthine flow guidance, and something critical called stabilized air pressure control.
Okay, so the first two stages seem to be like the prep work for the air entering the system. The intake pulls the air through an ionization zone and dual electrostatic pre-filters and then into a secondary ionization zone.
Yeah, those initial stages are basically the staging ground for the main event.
Okay.
In traditional systems, ionization is often the whole trick, right? Just dumping negative ions into a room to make dust heavy so it falls to the floor.
Right, the old school towers.
Exactly. But here, the secondary ionization zone serves a highly targeted function. It actually bombards every single incoming ultrafine particle, chemical aerosol, and pathogen with a negative electrical charge.
So it's actively electrifying them.
Yes. It is stripping electrons or forcing excess electrons onto these microscopic intruders, essentially turning every piece of debris into a negatively charged magnet.
Oh, wow. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting because once the air is loaded with these negatively charged toxins, it gets forced into stages 3 and 4, which the patent calls the tox box and the labyrinth effect.
The Tox Box, great name.
So good. And if you're picturing like a typical flat paper filter, just erase that from your mind entirely. Think of this as a high-speed microscopic pinball machine.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The physical design of this Tox Box is a really dense electric field architecture. Once the airflow enters, it is forced to navigate through more than 60 sharp turns and tiny perforations.
Wait, 60 sharp turns inside a single machine.
Yes, 60.
The centrifugal force alone must be throwing these particles everywhere.
Well, that is the mechanical strategy. It creates an environment of high-frequency, near-contact collisions. But the walls of this labyrinth aren't just, plastic or metal blocking the path. They are positively charged electrodes.
Ah, okay. Opposites attract.
Exactly. The negatively charged nanometer-scale particles are whipping around these incredibly tight corners, and through aggressive electrostatic attraction, they are violently pulled out of the airstream and slammed against the positively charged walls.
So the magnetic attraction completely overcomes the forward momentum of the air itself.
Completely. The electrostatic pull is so strong in these tight corridors that the patent states no particle can escape to the outlet. I mean, the air weaves its way out, but the contaminants are physically pinned to the interior architecture.
Okay, but I need to push back on the physics of this for a second because my brain is just throwing a red flag here.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
If this machine is trapping every single ultrafine particle, every chemical aerosol, every stray trace of smoke on these positively charged walls, eventually the labyrinth just fills up, right?
You would think so, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a trap only works until the trap is full, yet the document explicitly claims this physical absorption is continuous and never diminishes over time. How does a labyrinth catching 100% of contaminants never clog?
So this is where the engineering shifts from physical trapping to chemistry.
Oh.
Yeah. The Tox box isn't just holding these particles like a static filter. It is a chamber for molecular decomposition. It relies on a process called electrochemical oxidation.
Okay, so it's not a sticky trap. Is it more like a microscopic incinerator? Or, I don't know, a digestive tract?
Actually, a digestive tract is an excellent analogy. The Tox box integrates an electric field powerful enough to initiate a molecular level reaction the very millisecond a particle hits the wall.
Whoa!
Yeah. When a complex organic toxin or a biological aerosol is electrostatically slammed into that positive anode, the system just strips electrons away from the molecule. It literally tears the chemical bonds of the contaminant apart.
It shatters the molecular structure of the toxin.
Yes, it takes these complex, harmful organic structures and breaks them down into their absolute base components, which, thankfully, are harmless carbon dioxide and water.
Wait, really? So it vaporizes a microplastic, it turns physical toxic matter into trace amounts of CO2 gas and humidity.
It does. The system digests the organic material as fast as it captures it and then vents it out invisibly. And because of this continuous chemical breakdown, the system forms what the patent identifies as a self-purifying filtration layer.
Self-purifying.
Right. It basically possesses autonomous regeneration. It doesn't clog because the debris literally doesn't stay solid. It is constantly oxidized, dismantled, and expelled as clean gas and water vapor.
The efficiency of that is just mind-boggling to me. Every microsecond, billions of particles are entering a 60-turn electric pinball machine, getting slammed into the walls by static electricity, and then chemically dissolved into water vapor.
It's intense.
It is, which naturally brings us to stage 5, the final output, ultra-pure air.
Right, and we really need to examine what breathing this output actually does to the human body, because the source material includes this highly detailed matrix titled Master Insight #0001.
I saw that, yeah.
It provides a side-by-side comparison of different environments.
Right.
It pits the heaven air standard, which they define as the absolute ideal natural environment for human comfort, against the air 80 limit, which represents this extreme ceiling of human engineering.
Let's look at the actual metrics of the 80 limit, because honestly, it paints a picture of an atmosphere that simply does not exist anywhere on Earth.
No, it really doesn't. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see the biological optimization at play here. Take oxygen levels, for example.
Okay.
The ideal atmospheric concentration for human cellular metabolism is roughly 20.8 to 21%. This system automatically stabilizes the output at exactly 21.0%, with an incredibly tight margin of error of just 0.1%.
Wow, so it is just precision feeding your lungs.
Exactly.
And it actively keeps carbon dioxide levels under 400 parts per million.
For context, listener, right now, the room you are sitting in is probably hovering anywhere from 800 to over 1,000 parts per million of CO2.
Easily.
Getting under 400 ppm is like standing in the middle of a deep, ancient forest. The cognitive clarity and depth of sleep that provides is immense. Plus, ozone is kept at absolute 0 parts per billion.
And that zero ozone metric is crucial, because many older ionizing purifiers essentially produce ozone as a toxic byproduct of charging the air.
Right, they've that weird smell. Exactly. This architecture, however, completely neutralizes any ozone generation through that internal self-purifying oxidation layer. And furthermore, despite the violent microscopic collisions and high-velocity airflow happening inside the Toxbox labyrinth, the machine operates at or below 35 decibels.
35 decibels is essentially the sound of a quiet library, or a whisper.
It's virtually silent?
But, going through this Master Insight document, the chemical breakdowns and the decibel limits weren't even the most striking parts to me. It was the description of the human physiological reaction to existing in this air.
Oh, the zero pressure thing?
Yes. The text repeatedly describes it as inducing a completely zero-pressure breathing state.
Yeah. The documentation actually claims the physical sensation is akin to feeling like no air exists.
Like breathing nothingness. Because labyrinth architecture perfectly guides the airflow out into the room, it creates a uniform pressure field. You don't feel drafts, you don't feel dead zones or shifts in wind direction. And because every single microscopic irritant has been eradicated, there is absolutely zero physical friction on your skin or the lining of your respiratory tract. Your body literally stops registering that it is inhaling a physical substance.
It's wild because we are entirely accustomed to the subtle, continuous friction of our atmosphere.
Yeah.
You feel the weight of dust in a dry room. You notice the faint chemical smell of cleaning products. You feel the specific density of a breeze on your skin. To strip all of that away leaves an environment perfectly calibrated for total biological rest. It is essentially sensory deprivation, but specifically targeted at the lungs and cellular defense mechanisms.
So what does this all actually mean? I mean, creating a zero-pressure, toxin-free void in a living room sounds incredible, but is it ultimately just the world's most over-engineered sleep aid? Is this just a luxury appliance for billionaires trying to optimize their REM cycles?
Well, a look at the uses category in the source material proves the intent is much, much broader than luxury. The creator categorizes the Air 80 limit not just as heaven-grade, but as divine-grade technology.
Divine grade.
Yes. It is specifically engineered for the absolute extremes of human survival and vulnerability.
Right. It lists things like disaster preparation, high-level scientific research facilities, medical recovery wards, and longevity housing.
Yeah. But honestly, the most revealing application listed is its anti-nuclear aerosol capability.
And anti-nuclear aerosol. I mean, that is a massive leap from just keeping volatile organics out of your bedroom.
It is, but it perfectly illustrates the core mechanism of the labyrinth. Radioactive fallout doesn't just exist as pure energy, right? It travels by clinging to dust, ash, and smoke, basically, aerosols.
Oh, wow.
So if this machine can capture and dismantle ultrafine aerosols with 100% efficiency based purely on their electrostatic charge, it means it can technically scrub radioactive isotopes from an intake stream.
That's terrifying and amazing.
It's designed to keep a sealed environment perfectly pristine, even in the event of a catastrophic nuclear scenario.
So we're talking about an air system designed to function as a literal, impenetrable shield. It isn't just about breathing comfortably. It is about extending and preserving human life against any conceivable airborne threat.
Exactly. And the conclusion of the Master Insight document emphasizes this distinction heavily. It suggests that while heaven air allows the human body to relax, the Air 80 limit makes the air pure enough to shield life itself. The text actually refers to heaven air plus as a more perfect dream than nature could ever organically provide.
Man, just think about the journey this air takes. We were talking about the sheer audacity of the 8 zeros, targeting everything down to the PM 0.1 level. The air is stripped of electrons, heavily charged, and forced through a 60-turn microscopic maze.
Where it is subjected to massive electrostatic forces, slammed into positively charged walls, and chemically shattered.
Unbelievable.
Complex organic toxins are oxidized and dismantled into basic water vapor and carbon dioxide, allowing the machine to regenerate its own trap indefinitely.
And delivering an environment perfectly locked at 21% oxygen with zero friction. It makes you acutely aware of what your body is doing right this second.
Oh, for sure.
Like, as you are listening to this, your lungs are working overtime. You are filtering out the chaotic, microscopic reality of the modern world.
Yeah.
It is a biological tax you pay with every breath, and this patent represents an aggressively engineered attempt to repeal that tax.
This raises an important question, though, when we consider the long-term evolutionary implications.
Okay, what's that?
Well, the human respiratory tract and the immune system didn't evolve in a vacuum. They evolved precisely by interacting with a hostile environment.
Right.
We developed our biology by constantly fighting off microscopic invaders, filtering natural impurities, and adapting to the chemical makeup of the air around us.
So our bodies are fundamentally built to struggle against the environment. The friction is actually part of the design.
Exactly. So what happens to human biology if we actually succeed in creating this divine-grade void? If human beings spend generations living and sleeping in engineered zero-pressure perfect air, do our natural evolutionary defenses simply atrophy and go dormant because they have no pathogens or dust to practice on?
Oh, wow. Use it or lose it.
Right. Or, alternatively, does freeing up all of that immense biological energy the calories no longer spend on being a human air filter unlock a completely unprecedented stage of human longevity and evolution?
Are we shielding ourselves into a state of perfect safety? Or are we making our biology entirely dependent on a 60-turn microscopic labyrinth? I really want you to ponder that as you take your next deep breath. Notice the subtle weight of the air, the slight friction in your chest, the invisible, relentless work your body is doing right now to keep you alive. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.